Okay, so good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depending on which part of the world you're in. So welcome to another exciting webinar brought to you from IUCEE, IFEES, and GEDC. People are trickling in, so thank you all for joining. We have a distinct pleasure to have today a very exciting webinar on the transdisciplinary education for circularity in construction, leveraging building information modeling for material use. And it's a very interesting program, and in fact has received the IFEES Global Sustainability Award in 2023. This team from University of Pretoria. So that is really an exciting webinar to listen to. Just quickly, a few words about the authors. Dr. Khaled Davy, with a background in architecture and environmental design, focuses on urban strategy, digital transformation, and innovation in the built environment. A senior lecturer at the University of Pretoria. She leads the Hatfield Digital Twin City Initiative and Urban Strategy Studio, integrating emerging technologies with regenerative design and delivery practices. And the partner in this webinar is Dr. Johan van der Merwe. Johan completed his bachelor's degree in civil engineering and master's in structural engineering at the University of Stellenbosch, South Africa. Obtained his doctorate at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich. And after several years working as structural design engineer on projects across Africa, Australia, and New Zealand, he joined the University of Pretoria. So thank you, folks. Khaled and Johan, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take the lead. Just quickly, I have to share my screen. So if you can just bear with me while I do that real quick. And then I just need a quick confirmation that you can hear me well and that it is in presentation mode. Great, wonderful. Okay, so yes, from where we are in South Africa at the moment, good afternoon from myself and Khaled Davy. So of course, this is an overview of the submission or the project that we've submitted that won the 2023 Kwanzaa Global Sustainability Award. So I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of the motivation behind the study and what the study involved. Khaled will share a bit on the teaching in part of the initiative and the reason why that went well in the competition as well. And then we'll also touch a bit on what the award meant for our academic careers. And also what happened consequent to the award, which I think the award committee also don't know yet. So we recorded a video with the students who've now all since left that we've also shared at the award ceremony in Monterrey in Mexico in 2023. So I just quickly wanted to show you a little bit of that video, perhaps not the entire video, but it is on YouTube. But I just wanted to share you the video with you because I think it's important to hear the voices of the students who were involved in this initiative.
So the focus of this initiative was geared towards more circular value chains in building materials. So in other words, how can we improve sustainability in the built environment and reduce
I think there's a freeze.
Why it's so? I don't know why it's so.
I'll just say something. I'll just communicate with him quickly. I think his internet froze. Just a second. So while we're waiting for him to just figure out the tech, this video is on YouTube. So we might not play the whole thing, but it does include the student voice. And I think that's a very important part of why we wanted to show you today. So we'll happily provide a link to this submission. It's very important to us to make sure that this is not just a conceptual, theoretical, academic exercise, but it did really transform the participants as they went through it with us. So while my colleague is signing back up, I'll summarize the video for you. It starts with an overview of the project, its environment, its sites, and the background and the people involved in getting to this project of circularity. The major issue that we are dealing with in this world is not necessarily disciplinary knowledge, but actually the collaboration between disciplines on real world problems, because sustainable and regenerative spaces require much more integration that our education frameworks are allowing for. And with this mindset, we set out on this project to address the background issue of what the world needs in terms of the next 100 years in built environment construction, engineering, and related disciplines. And how are we going to prepare the new generation of people to enter this world from the start? Otherwise, we end up with participants that are in firms that only learn much later the necessary leadership and collaboration skills in their careers. It's often only at the 5 or 10 year mark that a professional enters into their mid-career management position. And at that moment, it's a big delay in what we can do as impactful participants if we don't teach at the core of how to work together. So I suggest, Johan, I've just summarized why we did it, and then I will put the link to the video on in the chat, and let's move through the rest of the presentation and we can continue from there.
Thank you. Apologies for that, ladies and gentlemen. I think I might have broken the internet with that video. So let's not do that again. Here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and skip over. Oh no, sorry. Just give me 2 seconds. I'm going to do this. I'm going to bypass that. So, okay. So, sorry. So apologies for that. I also didn't quite follow 100% everything that Khaled might have shared. But so then I'm just going to run through this a little bit quicker than what I would have had. But the problem initially, or basically the motivation for this initiative was amidst a climate emergency and the substantial negative impact that the built environment has. It substantially contributes to global greenhouse gas emissions, with a lot of that greenhouse gas emissions really coming from the carbon that is embodied in the material that we use to build our building structures. It's also an industry that's associated with large amounts of waste, notably from the end of life or demolition phase of building structures. And so that's because traditionally we've got a very linear value chain in the construction industry where we produce building materials, we put them together into building structures, and then finally just demolish the material and throw it away. And all of these steps, of course, cost money and as a carbon footprint. And so the premise of this study was to think about more circular value chains to see how could we disassemble a building for selective reuse to put that material back into circulation to reduce the amount of new material that we need to use. So, and the hypothesis that we wanted to test in this group was whether deconstruction for selective reuse might be both cheaper and the more environmental friendly thing to do. So the project focused on 2 greenhouse structures on the premise of the University of Pretoria. They were not any very beautiful structures for sure, but they are heritage buildings. They're very old. And we chose them because the structure is nice and exposed, and students can visualize how the structure fits together. So it made life a bit easier for students. And we used the opportunity to employ various forms of technology, from multi-million rand drones with LiDAR scanners through to shovels, where we had to expose structures that are hidden, and investigating the strength of various structural elements. And ultimately, students worked their way together as a group to map the buildings to develop a digital twin model, which includes all the information of every little bit and piece in that building structure. Of course, the dimensional properties, the type of material, but also the structural condition, because the more damaged the material might be, the less reusable it might be. So essentially, we developed a condition assessment rating system, rating it from rating 1, very bad, to rating 5, it's in a very good condition, to say, okay, to investigate different strategies for reuse. We might, in a traditional scenario A, say we might be demolishing a structure like this, and if we wanted to erect a similar one, buy all of that material new. Scenario B might be we only throw away the very bad material and we reuse everything else, up to different extents of damage that we try to do remedial work on, which also costs money and has an embodied carbon footprint, and reuse only the word, or buy new only or reuse as little as possible. So essentially, we said we investigated what would be the influence of using different damaged states of this material. So this formed part of subsequent research, and essentially we were able to prove the hypothesis true that, and this I'm not going to elaborate on, the master thesis on this is uploaded, so if anyone's interested, they can reach out and I'll point them to this. But essentially, we were able to show that as opposed to a business as usual case, this reference case, a very small amount of reuse, only reusing the best material, selective reuse is actually a worse off scenario. But the more you reuse, the less the rand and cent cost and the less the embodied emission. So this is essentially the context in which this project took place. This is where the results were heading and followed after the award ceremony. So I'm going to hand over to Khaled to take us through how we actually did this with the students.
Thank you, and you can continue. So as I introduced in Johannes offline, it's very important for us to not just develop technical expertise, but also collaborative expertise, because the world needs that more than the technical edge. So we used the BIM, Building Information Modeling and Management process, to teach the students, one, the knowledge transfer process of making work together, two, the technical skill of digitizing and digitalizing work. And we did this through building several incremental models with the students about the deconstruction potential and issues that Johan highlighted, all the way from level 100 to 400 and 500 as we were working with the project. Next. So the students built these tools, Johan, you can go next. Thank you. Collaboratively, this is perfect. And they were working together in one environment, on site together as from various diverse disciplines, from construction economics to engineering and different types. Geography was on site as well, and a lot of architecture, interior and landscape architecture participation. And what made this transdisciplinary as well is we had the professional architects who were contracted for the job on site. And this was their first BIM experience as heritage architects. And this is an important thing for transdisciplinarity. And we also had the stakeholders, in this case, the owners of the property, who have no technical skill, even though they're University of Pretoria, they are asset owners, part of the team. And that made this a truly transdisciplinary environment. And it wasn't just the professional disciplines working together, but it was all beginners working on a same shared problem to solve it from disciplinary perspectives collectively. The most interesting thing about this was the learning. Not that the science wasn't very interesting as well, but we asked the students to say, okay, students, how are you going to deploy this work? Well, who's going to do what? How are you going to figure out the answer? And the first thing, draw us an organogram of how you see work happening. And the first thing was this one. On week 1, they drew us this picture, organizing very clearly the disciplinary silos of how their disciplines, how they thought of the disciplines, roles, work efforts, and so on. You can go next. And 3 weeks later, they realized that this is not an isolationary sport. This is a team sport. We need to learn from each other, give knowledge transfer, skills transfer, and to work on a problem together is not the same as working from your disciplinary expertise. They also identified that there's things they do not know, and they have missing team members, and the orange represents some of the missing team members they started bringing in. And the lines in the network started to shift much more in a collaborative way, because they started realizing the importance of working together and needing each other, as opposed to just competing from a disciplinary isolation. And this was incredibly important. Johan, you can go next. Because at the core of it all of a sudden, the work was the focus, not the discipline. And solving the problem together became not my role in this project, but our work and how we are working together, no matter the expertise or prior history or whatever your story and label is that you bring to the job. And for us, this is an incredibly important lesson as professionals going to the 21st century, dealing with these complex and wicked problems of the now, but also of the next 100 years. Next. So what was interesting about this is students suddenly, without our interference, started cross-skilling and training each other in simple things. For example, architects and engineers quickly learned that they have no idea how to cost the things that they have imagined. And the QSs you see in the room, they volunteered themselves. We did not ask for it. They volunteered themselves to the project to start cross-pollinating and share educational histories about basic skills. And through that process, all disciplines started maturing much faster than they could do in isolationary silos. And we as teachers was becoming not teachers, but facilitators. And this made it a very rich experience. It was so interesting that the professional stakeholders stayed on the project with us in the classroom beyond their contact hours, because they were learning much quicker about the same processes than they would have done in a normal education setting. Next. So the students were incredibly enthused to continue this work forward. You can go next. They were participating in a lot of conferences with us. A lot of them started to describe themselves differently as I'm a built environment enthusiast with expertise in engineering and architecture, and I am working on a bigger or higher order problem like sustainability or regeneration or circularity. And for us, that matters a lot, because the magnitude of the problems we face with the built environment cannot be solved in isolation. It has to be solved in a collaborative fashion. So you'll see many of these students also went on to pursue passionate projects and received rewards beyond this project. And we can elaborate on that if you have any questions for that. Johan, you can continue with the next section.
Thanks, Khaled. Yeah, I just wanted to underscore what Khaled just said, is that I think some of us already knew that going into this project, but working on this with this students from the various different disciplines really just underscored that the complexity associated with climate change and the influences of climate change is such that we can't solve these problems in isolation. And I think we wouldn't have been able to get to the quality result that we ended up getting to if either me or Khaled wanted to do this ourselves. So the project had a very definite value to us. We also now have a publication that's been submitted for review. So it's also got value from a research perspective. But of course, it was tremendously satisfying to also see that the project was also, considered valuable by others. So we were very honored to be awarded the Kwanzaa Global Sustainability Award in Monterrey, in Mexico, in 2023. This was especially a very honored to get this award, because both me and Khaled are quite fresh in our academic careers, if you will. So this is really a fantastic way for us to establish ourselves also on the one hand, of course, to get some international recognition. That is very good for any academic in their career early on. The cash prize was also especially valuable for people who are trying to establish themselves in academia. You always need some startup funds to get yourself off the ground. But I would say the cash prize was valuable, but the recognition and the exposure specifically was the greatest benefit. International, yes, but also specifically in our own institutions, for us to establish ourselves as the go-to persons for inter or transdisciplinary research, and to then subsequently also attract the right kind of postgraduate students who want to do research on these kinds of topics. Because I think for inter or transdisciplinary research, you need the right kind of personalities, the kind of people who are willing to put egos aside and learn something from their own discipline from another discipline. So that was really for me the most substantial benefit of the work. And then Khaled, maybe just over to you real quick.
Yeah, so part of my portfolio and interest in this career is innovation through developing people. And this was a wonderful project for me because it was a way for us to demonstrate pedagogy and to teach in this way. And I was very honored to receive the faculty award for teaching prior in parallel with this Quansar, but also as a consequence of Quansar, for teaching and learning in innovative ways, and later on the institutional teaching and learning award as well. And I think the Quansar award allowed surfaced publicly how valuable this type of education is in the built environment. Not just the technical importance of how to deconstruct and stop sending buildings to landfill, but also that what it means for human beings and how it is teachable. And I think the teachable aspect is important because we often think that it's circumstance and luck that bring people together, and we underscore the importance of teaching and facilitation in maintaining momentum to develop the human beings in the moment while they're doing the work and bringing them forward. So it was very rewarding for me to get this recognition post Quansar and because of Quansar. Next.
And this initiative has also brought along a number of other initiatives where we're continuing to foster this inter and transdisciplinary type of research as well as education. Notably, in recent years now, also going into timber construction, where we have workshops where engineers, architects, several other discipline students work together to try and solve problems in the built environment. So this transdisciplinary focus is kind of continuing in what we do. Okay, so thank you very much for the opportunity. Krishna, over to you, I guess. I will stop sharing.
I don't know if if he can hear us. While we wait for Krishna, I did post the YouTube link in the chat box. You're welcome to reach out for us if you want more information about that video or any of the other content we shared today. I'm not sure if Krishna is still there.
I'm sure he is there. I'm just wondering, Krishna, I'm not sure. I think it would be very, very thoughtful if some of you may want to raise some questions that have come out of the presentations by our two colleagues. I think here's Krishna. Go ahead, Krishna.
I just had a slight hiccup in my connection, so
sure, understood.
And I made my colleague be the co-host so that in case I disappear, he would take over. So anyway, great. This is fantastic. It's exactly the kind of thing that some of us in our IUCEE organization are trying to do with students. In fact, Piyush Vishnu, who's one of our IUCEE experts, is working on sustainability and how to develop this kind of teaching and learning pedagogy and projects, and so he has some comments. So are you now able to see how to spread this to more projects? I mean, you have the pedagogy now figured out to some extent, right? Now, can you scale it up to more projects, more classes, more students? Have you done it already?
Excuse me, sorry, Krishna, you just broke up a little bit there. I don't know, Khaled, if you could follow the question. I just didn't quite follow the question.
Okay, let's give somebody else a chance. Anil, come in.
Hello, can you hear me all right?
Yes,
better.
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. I have a question. One of the students' project that was done here was basically to improve the air quality index. And what they did was the carbon dioxide that is in the air is absorbed by the cement layers of the building. Now, if it is absorbed, the air improves and people find it easy to breathe. But you started with carbon getting deposited in the buildings. This CO2 would go into the cement structures along the road and so forth. Would it have an impact on reconstruction and things like that?
Anil, I guess that's a very technical question, of course, but yes, it definitely could. So from what we've seen now in this study is that the possibility of reusing elements definitely depends significantly on the state or on the condition of the element. In other words, how much refurbishment would you have to do on the element in order to reuse it? Carbonizing concrete is actually detrimental to the concrete, so it might have a detrimental effect to the concrete element itself. But there's also, whenever a structural element does deteriorate, you could also always downcycle elements as well. So there are opportunities to use, say, something that used to be a wall, to use it subsequently as a surface bed. So I think there's many solutions, but it would definitely be case by case driven. I don't think there would be a blanket answer that applies throughout.
Okay.
Thank
My
you.
question I put in the chat box. Have you been able to scale up to more students?
Oh, sorry, it's still a little broken. Can you repeat? Can you try one?
In the chat box. I put in the chat box. I put it in the chat box.
Thank you. Okay, I'll take that one. It is a process. So scale, we have like a couple of thousand engineers and a couple of dozen architects in our school. So there's and on our faculty. So there's an issue of balance, and there's an issue of scaling in an appropriate way. So what I spend most of my time from Quansar to now is to establish a framework of teaching that is replicable, that is transferable to other contexts. And I'm slowly scaling up so that the teaching approach is adoptable in any kind of context on any kind of problem. Parallel to that, we are in serious discussion with our university to have faculty-wide integrated projects emerging at scale. This is a long-term initiative of the university that is formalizing. It is important for us to formalize this because otherwise we are dependent on luck of the teachers, luck of the draw in the students, and instead of a pedagogical approach. And if it's not a pedagogical approach, it is it's not sustainable. So what we are doing with our faculty in our university is slowly planting the integrative project pedagogy one by one, detail by detail. And we are actually now discussing whether we should have a faculty-wide initiative versus a center for innovation. This is the kind of topic that we are debating actively with the executives. It matters a lot to them. And so, yeah, scale will come because we want to formalize, but it takes a while to align, a 5,000 student body to make that happen.
Thank you so
I
much.
actually
We
want to
have
just follow up on that.
Piyush has a question. Piyush, come in.
Yeah, thanks, Krishna. Thanks to both of you for bringing this interesting interdisciplinary project. I think there's something we at IUCEE are also pushing our institutes that, sustainability is really multidisciplinary. So my question to you is, I could make it out from your presentation that the students got together and then they realized, oh, this skill is missing. We need to get it. But what did, it's very difficult to break this chimney structure where all the institutes are organized department wise. So my question to you is, if you can throw some light on, what are the techniques or methods or whatever ways you use to break that, that will be helpful. Thank you.
You start and then I'll continue.
Yeah. So I must add that, as is the case often with something that ended up working very well, we had a fair bit of luck on our side as well. So one thing that worked very well for us in this initiative is that we tried to do as little effort as possible. In other words, we were able to connect two modules, one in the Department of Architecture, one in the Department of Civil Engineering, and between Khaled and me, we had the freedom and the ability to define the project such that it worked in both of our departments' work, and so that we could naturally link them without creating a new module, without going through all the administrative processes of doing all of that. And that to me proved something that's also valuable on a research level and linking back to the earlier question on scalability, in that on the teaching front, that worked very well for us. And what we could also gain from that we are now taking into research collaboration or interdisciplinary research collaboration, is that working like this on an easy as possible level to define the problem works very well in this transdisciplinary landscape. But to then at some point take that problem back into the silo and to indeed respect the discipline-specific knowledge as well, to solve some very specific technical problems in that discipline, and then subsequently bringing it back to the interdisciplinary table again, both on the teaching side, but also on the research side. So I think the biggest thing that I could say that worked very well for us was trying to investigate natural sort of common ground between existing modules to make it as easy as possible to do this. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Let's go to Jayant. Jayant, come in. There's one question in the chat box. Later on, one of you can look at that about rubric. Okay, go ahead.
Rubrics on the design develop. Okay, so think of this process like Johan described as it starts together work,
and it's really out of necessity. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to respond to the rubric question. I'll be as quick as possible. We are not trying to undermine the importance of disciplinary expertise. We're trying to elevate the importance of learning from each other. So if you look at this project, if I could draw a diagram with my hands, we start together on the problem like this. We expand as a team until we've reached a critical threshold of enough knowledge about the thing. Then we collapse back into our silos without losing contact, but about expertise and disciplinary outputs, because that is a necessary learning part for the student. They have to learn the maturity of their discipline, but they do not lose contact with the team. They do, and then they go back out again when their question grows. So it's more like a collapse and a wave and a collapse and a wave. It's that kind of routine that we set up throughout the year. So when a discipline enters that space, they find it easy for them to are they in the core or are they on the fringe of solving this problem together? And so the quantity surveys that I said and the real estate students who volunteered, they volunteered because from their disciplinary perspective, they found a home for them somewhere in that expansion, but they didn't necessarily have to contribute to the technical outcomes. So, and it is that motion, if you think of the teaching throughout time, of going in and going out and collapsing and coming back together, it makes people enter and exit at the right time when it's necessary for them while maintaining maturity. So on the rubrics question, the disciplinary leaders are testing rubrics. They are checking that my student has matured and achieved their disciplinary outcomes. But as a collective, we work on the real world problem. And in this way, we maintain the integrity of our disciplines while collaboration is satisfied in the journey. I hope that makes sense.
Okay, that's good, Dan.
Yeah, thank you. No, the explanation was very good, Kaleida. But you can't really predefine the combinations of courses, combinations of departments. It really goes case by case. So we'll have to do a lot more talking and thinking about how do you implement that into the teaching process.
Yeah.
My question is also from the commercial end of it. Have you had any comparison of if you were to build this structure with brand new virgin materials versus what you did? Was that economically feasible? Because this was a university project, maybe you were able to more influence it. If it's a commercial project, the commercial customer typically wants to know, am I going to save money doing this? So
Yes.
can you touch upon that, please?
Yes, I'll take that question. Yes, that's definitely something we wanted to avoid because we don't want to get a result that's not really of any benefit beyond our own academic exercise. And so to that extent, what we haven't shown in this, and that was what wasn't part of this submission that subsequently came to the table, were other commercial partners as well. So we had, for instance, one of the leading demolition companies, global demolition companies, who were kind enough to collaborate with us. So they worked with one of the students who continued with her master's degree research. Now, pulling that back to the silo then, if you will. So we worked very closely with that commercial demolition contractor to be sure that the monetary values that we stick to, the deconstruction process, the demolition process, the rebuilding process, any refurbishment work, that the values that we use there are actual values that a commercial client is likely to face. So although the case study was very much a building part of the University of Pretoria, we approached this as being a more generalized case study. In other words, not specific to a university context.
Okay, we got Abhay. You want to come in, unmute yourself?
Yeah, good afternoon. Good morning. Where we stand, I don't know. Thank you very much. It was very interesting to get the information. First of all, let me introduce Abhay Vengolekar. I am with NICMAR Pune. I am professor of practice in the School of Construction. So absolutely a very interesting and I think very relevant subject that we all are concerned about, how sustainability and construction could be combined or they go hand in hand. So thank you very much for sharing details of your project. Couple of questions. Already, I think they are covered. First of all, I wanted to know commercially how did it stand? So you already answered that. So that's a good thing because otherwise it serves no purpose if it is just academic. So thanks for that. More interesting would be, do you have a kind of a project report that you prepared to execute this whole work, or probably even a lesson learned as to where and how challenges were coming, or how did you tackle and deal with them? So that would be of interest. And second part was about the technical collaborations that interdisciplinary, as you mentioned, the architectural and structural teams did. Probably that if you have some information about how boundary limits were set, or how did you control the flow of information, if there is anything on that, that would also help. And we probably would like to discuss more as we go forward and take this forward. Thank you.
Maybe I might take the first part of the question, Khaled, if you can take the second. Okay, so just to be sure my understanding, I understand your question correct, is basically, do we actually have an opportunity to physically deconstruct and reconstruct the building with students to explore potential problems that we might not have from a desktop study?
That's correct. Yeah.
Well, so that would have been ideal. Unfortunately, the answer is no. There's a couple of things to consider there. On the one hand, it is a tedious process where with working with students, you often, you're limited with the duration that students are involved in certain modules or projects. So that's one hindrance. And another notable one is health and safety, because they are not trained professionals. We do not feel comfortable letting them loose on a demolition site. It's a type of activity that is a very risky process. So no, we didn't do that. And we also didn't have the opportunity yet to even do this with a commercial client, students not being involved. With this project, there is a potential for this to happen in some years. And when and if that happens, hopefully Khaled and I will still be around to be part of that.
And in terms of information management, we simply asked for a very basic BIM implementation plan. So we asked the students, well, it was part of teaching them simplified BIM. Yeah. And they had to draft a BIM BEP in a simple terms. And we didn't go into extreme depth with that. And they had to spec their levels of details for their BIM models. They had to figure out how to collaborate on the same model. And they had to mature the model systematically. And with every review cycle, we would say, are we at level 200 or not? Are we here? Are we there? So we used the BIM process in a very simplified way to teach them digital design and collaboration and information management, and to teach them how technical aspects plug in. So for example, our quantity surveyors are very BIM naive. And for them, this was very, very helpful because they don't get any training in our schools in BIM. Our architects are very graphic BIM. They make visualizations very well, but they do not math. And our engineers are very strong at the data, but they do not visualize. So in that way, the BIM process gave them a systematic way to move up in the model, figure out how to work together, and find plugins to execute the work together. And I think that was very helpful because we didn't have to overteach, and they could see the value of how much that would mean for them in the profession. So they were very enthusiastic to figure out BIM, even with mistakes. And the problem was very concrete. They had to figure out how to BIM for deconstruction. And that also helped them focus their efforts and not over or under develop the model.
Good, understood. Yeah.
Okay, perhaps Khaled and Johan, can you both of you put your email IDs in the chat box? Some of the folks had stuff you might want to follow up. Just put your email IDs in the chat box, the two of you.
Yes.
That will help. And then if there are no other questions, I'll hand this over to Hans. Excellent discussion we've had, actually, from several people. Hans, you want to come in? You have to unmute yourself.
I want to express my deep appreciation, part of our three communities that are working in partnership for this webinar series. I'm very, very pleased. We just made the decision, our colleagues at Quanzer and the entire team, for our winner this year, and that individual will be honored in our forthcoming global conference coming up in Daegu, South Korea. I just want you to know it's an important commitment that Quanzer has supported over the last 4 years and going into the 5th year per se. I just wanted to let all of you know that. And the final comments, and obviously deeply, deeply appreciate this very thoughtful dialogue that that we just had now, is to also invite and encourage many of you to join us this September in South Korea. I'm in close touch with many colleagues from India and have a very strong representation of the Indian community there, and of course of other parts of the world. So I just wanted to, if you have any questions about that, please get in touch with me, and I'm very happy to introduce you to our very, very thoughtful colleagues and hosts there at DGEST University in Daegu. With that, Krishna, both Johan and Khalid, thank you. Keep up your thoughtful, inspiring work, per se. We will certainly share this presentation that you made today on video with our global community moving forward. Thank you, and peace be with all of you.
Thank you.
Okay,
You're welcome.
all of you.
Thank you.
Take care,
Much
everybody.
appreciated.
Good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.